Hello and welcome to episode number 70 of the Scottish History Podcast. My name is Owen Innes, and this time what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be first of all giving you a little update as to why I've not been here for a little while, but secondly I have another one of these little articles, one of these blogs that I found online, and I just want to kind of go through that and explain my kind of views on it. So join me for episode number 70 of the Scottish History Podcast. So first of all, folks, I just want to give you a little update as to why I've not been around for a couple of weeks. First of all, if you've been on Facebook, if you follow me on Facebook, then you'll probably know most of what I'm about to tell you. But first of all, I did have my brother's wedding back on the 12th of December, so about 10 days ago, and we had a lovely time. It was a good day. It was had by all. A couple of days later, though, I woke up with very bad flu-like symptoms, and I ended up testing positive for Omicron coronavirus. So for the last week, I have basically been sleeping and not feeling in any way up to doing anything. With that in mind, basically what I've decided to do just for the next little while is to just try and put out as much content as I possibly can, trying to obviously do that on a weekly basis. But what I don't have obviously at this moment in time is a huge amount of time as well, with it being the Christmas period and everything like that too. So I don't really have the time in order to do full research for proper history sort of episodes, which has been disappointing for me. I'm sure it's also been disappointing for you guys as well. But I want to keep putting out content for you to be able to listen to, because I enjoy putting out these podcasts. Also, just as a sort of another thing as well, it's now officially been 2 years. I started this podcast on the 21st of December, 2019. So we have now actually been going for 2 years as well. So just once again, folks, as I do at the end of every episode, but I want to take another little second just to say thank you so very much for everybody for listening and helping to grow this podcast to the size that we have been. I'm very, very happy with the way that things have turned out, and you're all fantastic, you're all amazing. Thank you very much for listening, and of course to all those new people that are coming in and sort of just kind of getting to know myself and things like that. As usual, if you've got any questions or even any suggestions for any future episodes, please let me know. So anyway, this week what I wanted to do was I found another one of these blogs. The last one seemed to be quite well received, so I found another blog. This one's called catsgoneglobal.com, and as usual I'll link down in the sort of description box to the blog in question. So you can go across there and read what the author herself, in this case, has to say. But a little background, so Kat seems to have moved over to the UK from Australia, seems to live down in London, but has made quite a few little posts about Scotland and things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through her article, which is called 30 Things to Know Before Travelling to Scotland. Now, this will be something that once full restrictions and everything like that have disappeared and that the world is kind of opening up properly, this is another subject that I will be coming back to as well, helping people with perhaps, making a little road trip itinerary and things like that. and of course maybe talking to some of the tour companies who, let's face it folks, are going to be needing as much support as they possibly can over the coming years to get themselves back to where it was even just say a couple of years ago. But this one, so 30 things to know before travelling to Scotland. I read through this one, and most of the points I do agree with, but some of them I think are maybe just a little bit short-sighted in a way. So we'll go through them, and we'll see what we think. So we'll start first of all with the first one, and that is Scotland is its own country, and I mean I think we've pretty much established that over the course of this podcast. Indeed, Scotland is not a part of England; it is part of Britain, so the British Isles, and in technically as well part of the United Kingdom. It's one of the countries, one of the 4 countries that makes up the United Kingdom. Great Britain itself isn't a country. Britain is the island in which we're on. So mainland Britain consists of Scotland, England and Wales. So Great Britain, or the United Kingdom in a way, also contains Northern Ireland. So we're off to a good start on that one. Scotland is indeed its own country. Please don't confuse it with England or anything like that. Another common thing which is mentioned in this article as well is the reference to Scottish people as Scotch people, and it seems to be happening a lot more on these Facebook groups and things like that, which I've come across. Now I do understand a lot of the time, and on these groups a lot of people aren't native English speakers and things like that, and I totally that's it's technically not acceptable to Scots. I mean, Scots will still argue with you about it, but using the term Scotch to refer to the people is wrong. Don't do it. We really don't like it. So another one of the things to know before travelling to Scotland is, of course, bring the right clothes. Again, totally and utterly agree with this. Like myself, I went across to America a few years ago for New Year's, and I stupidly took just shorts and t-shirt because, you know, every time before then I'd went to Florida, that's all I needed. And I got there and I realised it actually gets quite cold in Florida at that time of year. So then I had to go out and buy jeans and hoodies to keep me warm. So obviously do your sort of research, but when it comes to Scotland, always bring the right clothes. Bring t-shirts. I mean, my sort of standard dress, if I was going out even during the summer, would probably consist of a jumper or a hoodie with a t-shirt underneath, so if you get too warm you can take your jumper off, a pair of jeans, socks and shoes. You know, that's pretty much all you need. A hat if you like wearing hats. You know, but make sure that you bring with you, if you're coming from a foreign country, I suppose, bring with you everything that you're going to need. You're going to need a rain jacket. You're going to need extra socks, most definitely, especially if it is raining and your normal socks get wet, then it's easier to change into another pair of socks. So I would usually say bring double the amount of pairs of socks that you would normally bring with you. If it's during the winter, bring double of the double amount, because it's handy to wear 2 pairs of socks. Definitely, I find, I mean, that's what I wear every day in the winter. I always wear 2 pairs of socks anyway. So yeah, make sure that you bring the right clothing with you. Don't think that just because it's going to be the summer that you're not going to need a rain jacket or that you're not going to need a warm jumper. Bring warm clothes, because if you get too warm, you can always take those clothes off, rather than it being too cold and not have enough to make yourself warmer, kind of thing. So in relation to the clothes, bring comfortable walking shoes. So shoes that you're comfortable walking long distances in. Preferably a more kind of recent pair of shoes as well, rather than an older pair, because the cobbled streets in some of the cities, in Edinburgh and Stirling and things like that, you know, you want good grip. Specifically, and especially during the winter as well, you know, when it gets a little bit icy and when it is a little bit wetter as well. pavements get a little bit slippy. So it's always good to have a good pair of walking shoes. Now, I mean, one of my favourite ever pairs of walking shoes that I've ever owned, I bought for $9.99 from a shop called Decathlon. They're brilliant walking shoes, and they're cheap, and at the end of you can walk in, buy them from Decathlon, and then at the end you can just leave them here or donate them to a charity shop or something like that. You know what I mean? It is very, very much a thing worth mentioning, is to make sure that you have comfortable walking shoes, because in most cases it is easier to get around by walking, especially if you are in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Stirling. You're going to find it a lot easier to walk around than you are to drive, specifically. Public transport and things like that is very, very handy, but I always recommend a nice, comfortable pair of shoes, maybe even a couple of comfortable pairs of shoes. This is one of the ones, the next one is one of the ones that I kind of in a way disagree with, and that is avoid August in Edinburgh unless you're attending the Fringe Festival. I say combine August with the festival and being here. August is a great time to be in Edinburgh because there's so much happening all throughout the course of the day. Especially if you want to kind of feel that touristy feeling of being in a wonderful, magical city like Edinburgh. You're going to find walking tours. You're going to have the bagpipers out on the street. You're going to have these amazing street performers performing out in the street for free. There's amazing comedians, musicians, artists that come from all over the world just to be at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh. If it gets too much for you, you can book day tours from Edinburgh City. So that was my favourite time ever to do tours, was the fact that yes, I was escaping Edinburgh for the day, or a few days, if I was off to Skye or something like that. But because it would give everybody on the bus would then have something to talk about, and it gives you something extra to talk about. Oh, we saw this amazing performer performing the bagpipes on a unicycle, and the bagpipes had fire coming out of them, that kind of thing. And that gives something for you to talk about, especially when you get home, memories which will live on forever. If you are only ever going to plan on visiting Edinburgh once in your lifetime, August is the perfect time to do it, and come for 2 or 3 weeks. Spend that time. It is a lot more expensive, I'm not going to lie, especially with accommodation and things like that, but if you're able to afford it, if you're able to come over during August, it is a fantastic time to be in Edinburgh. Because it is a great, great time. So don't avoid Edinburgh during August unless you don't like it busy. If you don't like somewhere being very, very busy, then yeah, fair enough. Avoid Edinburgh then. But also avoid it during Easter, if that's the case, because Easter is the busiest tourist weekend in Scotland, and in elsewhere in the world as well. But Easter is the time when we get probably the best weather, or certainly the most predictable weather in Scotland. So, there is no right or wrong time to come, but I would never ever recommend to someone, don't come during August. Next up is book accommodation in advance, definitely. If you want to stay in somewhere small like Glencoe, even Fort William itself is quite small, just kind of reading from this article. Skye, very small. Inverness, there are plenty of places in Inverness, but if you want, I always recommend a bed and breakfast in Inverness. I find that the quality of the accommodation in a bed and breakfast in Inverness is just as good as the quality of the hotels. In fact, for my brother's stag do, we actually stayed in a kind of hostel kind of rooms thing. It wasn't quite a hostel, but it wasn't quite a bed and breakfast, but it was very, very, very good, very, very comfortable and things like that. But without question, book your accommodation in advance. Don't just think that you can rock up in the middle of summer to the Isle of Skye and be able to just walk into a hotel. From what I remember, there are like 4 hotels or 5 hotels on the entire island in Skye. So you're not going to be able to get a hotel, especially if you're very pernickety about hotels in general. Most of them are 2 or 3 stars. They're not much more than that. So they're not as good as you think that they are going to be. Bed and breakfast all the way. You also get that little personal touch. You might even be lucky, get yourself a little shortbread biscuit on your pillow in the morning, which is what you want, really. Good way to start the day. So next up, explore Scotland off the beaten path. Definitely go places that not everybody goes to. Like, for example, everyone will head out to Stirlingshire and go to Stirling Castle, go to Doon Castle. Visit the Deanston Distillery, which is just down the road from Doon. Head towards Callander, go into Callander, and go to some of the small little bakeries and things like that in Callander. There are so many places that people tend to avoid when they come to Scotland, and it is hard if you don't know the country. It is hard to visit places that aren't on the beaten path, but places like Orkney and things, not very many people will chance their arm and go all the way up to Orkney. Everyone will do the North Coast 500. I mean, the North Coast 500, if that's your type of thing, then brilliant, but you'll get so much more out of your visit by going somewhere like Orkney or the islands, to Lewis and Harris and places like that. You will get so much more out of your experience of being in the country, of going to these sorts of places, than you will be of just going to the places that every single person has heard of. Now, if you are going to be doing some island hopping, make sure that you book your ferry crossings in advance, especially if you're going to be, say, for example, following the train line from Fort William to Mallaig, like the Jacobite steam train. If you're driving, you get to Mallaig, you can get the ferry from Mallaig, you can go across to Armadale on Skye, you can go to Rum, Egg, all of these other smaller islands and things like that. But again, don't just expect to be able to rock up on the day and to be able to get them. When you book your flights, book your ferry crossings if you're going to any of the islands. You don't have to book a ferry crossing to go across the Skye. There is a free way to go across the Skye. It's called a bridge, right? But it depends on which side of which you're coming from. To go from Fort William to the Skye Bridge is a good hour and a half drive down some pretty narrow roads as well, but it is a beautiful drive along there because you go through Glen Shiel, and that's one of my kind of favourite wee drives to do. And you get to go right past Elandon and Castle and things like that. So yeah, book ferry crossings in advance. The next one is don't drive, try the Spirit of Scotland travel pass. In a way, I can agree with this in one way, and I can disagree in others, right? So that this travel pass, which I've not really looked into, I should have in hindsight, but the travel pass includes travel on trains, buses, coaches and ferries. But unfortunately, trains, buses, coaches and ferries don't go everywhere that you might want to go. So rent a car if you feel that you're going to need one and you want that privacy as well. That's one of the handy things is you can drive you're not limited to, you can stay out until midnight during the summer in Orkney, for example, where it never gets dark. You can drive around Orkney all night long, never gets dark. Whereas if you want to catch a bus around Orkney, the last one might be around about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening. So, you are kind of stuck there. So drive if it makes sense to you, but there are public transport options is probably what that should really say. Again, if you're going somewhere like Oban, you can get there by train on the same day and things like that. But yeah, drive if you want to, but if you find that it's going to be cheaper and better for yourself to use public transport, then do that. Now, what is the difference between Scottish and British money? I think we kind of mentioned this one in the last episode. It shouldn't really be called British money, though. So the difference between Scottish and British money. Right, so basically, just kind of read the first line from this article here. So the Bank of England is the central bank for the UK. It is a legal tender that must be accepted throughout the UK. Must be accepted? Not legally. All shop owners have the right to deny the use of paper banknotes, or polymer as they now are, anywhere in the UK. So if I owned the shop and someone came in with an English £10 note, I could refuse that. I would have to have a really good reason as to why not, but I could refuse the note. So in Scotland, as mentioned before, the retail banks are the Bank of Scotland, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and the Clydesdale Bank, and all of them have their own banknotes. So the article then continues, these are legal currencies that can be used to pay for goods and services, but outside of Scotland you may find businesses a little more reluctant to accept them. This is because they are not issued by the Bank of England. Bank of England was created by a Scotsman, but there you go. If you find yourself in other countries of the UK and not accepting your Scottish banknotes, pop into a bank to get them exchanged. You can do this. It's an absolute pain in the arse to do that. But most of the time nowadays, everybody just uses card anyway. So you can use contactless card payments nowadays for virtually anything. I mean, you can now even pay for your bus fare using a contactless card. So, to be honest, the whole thing of using actual paper money has started to decline. There are some places that do accept cash only, but it's very, very rare. And it's usually there's a bank machine right next to the shop where that will be the case. So yeah, the whole difference between Scottish and, I don't like that term, British money, but the difference between them, there is no kind of real difference as such. They just look different. But yeah, we kind of went through that in the last episode, but it is kind of a contentious issue, so I'll leave it there. Invest in a national trust membership. Again, I would disagree with that. If you're only going to be visiting National Trust properties, then it makes sense. Because National Trust organisations also work down in England, Northern Ireland and Wales. So if you're going to be doing a tour of the UK, most of the time when you go to England, it's going to be a National Trust property. Up in Scotland, we have a few National Trust properties, but not all of them are. We also do have the Historical Environment Scotland, or just Historical Scotland, passes as well. And again, depending on so if you're going to Edinburgh Castle, Stirling Castle, say Doon Castle, and then venturing up to Orkney, I would recommend that you get the Explorer Pass for Historical Environment Scotland, because you'll get into all of those sites for a set price. Even if you're just doing Edinburgh and Stirling Castles, it's better to buy the Explorer Pass anyway, because it's actually cheaper than paying the two separate entries. So basically, just be kind of candid in looking up where it is that you're going to be going to. Usually at the desk they ask these questions anyway. Are you going, so Edinburgh, they'll ask you, are you going to Stirling Castle as well? And they'll give you the passes for both. And again, that makes sense. In terms of National Trust membership, there are a few National Trust properties in Scotland, but there's not really that many to make it worth it. Culloden, for example, is a National Trust property. If you're only going there, it only costs you £13 an adult or something like that. I say only, I mean that is quite expensive, but if you go with a tour group, you usually get a massive discount. I think we used to get, our discount was about £6 or £7, I think, if I remember rightly, and you just had to go to the desk and say that you were with a tour group. So so I wouldn't say investing in a National Trust membership would be ideal, but again, look into the sites that you're going to before you get there, just for their prices. Obviously, don't read up about the history, because it's better to do it when you get there, kind of thing. Or, of course, listen to this podcast if I've covered it. But yeah, so we'll move on again. Now, Edinburgh is colder, but Glasgow is wetter. Yes, the west coast of Scotland is frequently known as the wet coast of Scotland. Edinburgh is a little bit closer to the sea. Yeah, so it is a little bit colder, and it is a bit windier and things like that. But yeah, I think that probably is very, very correct. Glasgow tends to be wet, whereas Edinburgh tends to be cold. I'd agree with that, yeah. Next up, we've got narrow roads. So I think we can kind of combine this with the driving one. I think I've mentioned this a few times before. The roads in Scotland are quite small, especially if you're used to driving on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lane highways or freeways or whatever they're called, in America or Australia and things like that. the most amount of lanes that we have on a motorway at any given time. 99% of the time you have two lanes. You've got the inside lane, which is known as the slow lane, and then the fast lane, which is for overtaking, in which case you move back over into the slow lane once you have overtaken. So when you're looking to rent a car and things like that, don't rent a massive bus. Just rent something that is the size that you're going to need, because again, if you're going to the Isle of Skye for a few days and you're driving up there, the roads are very, very small, and if you're not used to handling a large vehicle on small roads, it can make for a very torrid time for you. Bear in mind that our roads are very narrow in comparison to other places in the world. You won't really see people wearing kilts. Totally and utterly true. Usually on Princes Street or on the Royal Mile, and unless you gate crash a wedding. But again, I think we've kind of explained that one before. So we'll move on. Explore the natural beauty of Scotland. The natural beauty of Scotland is everywhere. You just need to step out of your place that you're staying, and you're only maybe a couple of minutes away from some kind of natural beauty or naturally beautiful thing. But there are great places. This place, right? catsgoneglobal.com recommends Fingal's Cave, which is the Isle of Staffa. So you need to get a boat out to there. And also recommends stargazing in the Galloway Forest Park. Now, I've not seen either of these things. I would love to do the stargazing in Galloway Forest Park. I would love to go and see Fingal's Cave as well, but I think it's more likely that you'd find me lying on the ground staring at the stars than sitting on a boat for an extended period of time. So explore the natural stuff. If you're going to Glencoe, don't just make a beeline straight for Glencoe. You go through Rannoch Moor, which is a site of special scientific interest. The place is absolutely fascinating. You just pull over at the side of the road where there's a nice gap or a parking space, and get out and just go for a little wander in the peat bogs. It is magnificent. So next up, you might experience a language barrier. The Scottish accent is quite difficult to understand. I understand that, but is for a lot of people. I wouldn't quite say a language barrier. In all fairness, the article does have quotation marks around language barrier. But if you are struggling to understand someone when you're in Scotland, don't over egg it, but basically just say, listen, I'm really, really sorry. I didn't understand what you said. Would you mind explaining that a little bit slower? And we'll have no problem in doing that. But when you just go, what? Oh, what's this guy saying? I don't understand. Oh, this is a foreign language. I don't. It is quite hurtful to us at times, and a lot of people do over egg it. It is something that's kind of become a bit of a stereotype, especially on TV shows and things like that. But if you've got a problem understanding us, tell us to slow down or tell us to explain it in a different way, and it'll make more sense. Now, this one I do remember. So the next one, I remember reading this and thinking that it was maybe a little bit not wrong, but so Scottish Gaelic. English is the main language. However, the Celtic language of Gaelic is still spoken throughout Scotland, and it is considered the founding language of the country. Partly true. Don't be surprised when you see bilingual road signs, discover the TV channel dedicated to Gaelic, or hear people speaking it in the Highlands. Now, there's nothing really wrong with that. Apart from, again, there's only about 60,000 out of the 5.5 million people that live in Scotland that speak Gaelic fluently, and it's mostly heard in the Outer Hebrides. So unless you're in the Outer Hebrides, you're not really going to hear someone speaking it. The article kind of wrongly would say that hear people speaking it in the Highlands. If you got to Fort William, most people that live in Fort William have, migrated from England. They all have English accents and things like that. So it's very, very unlikely that you're going to find someone who speaks Scottish Gaelic in a conversational sense. It's very difficult. I mean, I always wanted to learn to speak Scots Gaelic, but it's difficult when you don't have someone to converse with and someone to learn from. So, and that's in the biggest, not the biggest city, but the most major city or one of the most major cities in the entire country. It's difficult to find anyone to help you learn how to speak Scots Gaelic. So yeah, it's lovely when you do hear it, but the chances of you hearing it are, again, like 1,000,000 to 1 probably. Now, paying with debit and credit cards, I've already explained that. Most definitely bring a travel card, like one of these kind of top-up cards. We mostly accept Visa and MasterCard. American Express, this article does say that most major retailers will accept American Express. However, hardly anybody in the UK uses American Express, so make sure that you got a Visa or a MasterCard, either a credit or debit card, and you'll get on just fine. If it's contactless, it makes things a whole lot easier for you as well. So next one is tour responsibility. Definitely, I think we kind of talked about that one before as well. Taking care of the landscape mostly comes down to common sense, such as leaving sites how you found them, taking litter away, and not dropping waste that conflicts with the natural ecosystem. Don't drop waste at all. Take it all away with you. But yeah, tour responsibility. This then recommends recommends a organised tour company, of which I could recommend hundreds to you. So I'm not going to pick out like just the largest one. But yeah, if you're unsure about what you want, or you're sure about what you want to go and see, but you're unsure about driving and things like that, use one of these tour companies. They are fantastic at what they do. They've been going for, a lot of them have been going for a lot longer than 10 years and things like that. So they are fantastic, and they do help you out when and where they can too. But go on an epic road trip is the next one. The best way to really explore Scotland is by car. Totally and utterly agree. But make up your own road trip. Don't just do the North Coast 500. Don't just do the East Coast 250 or whatever the heck it's called. There's so many great places to go and see. Again, I will more than happily help you with a wee itinerary. If you want to send me a little message, I will more than happily help you. But yeah, driving around Scotland is much easier than you think. But a lot of people do have reasons why they wouldn't want to try driving across here, and that's totally and utterly fine. In which case, use one of these tour companies, book someone on a private tour. You usually find that will cost just a little bit more than renting out a vehicle for yourself. So yeah. Visit a loch that is not Loch Ness. I think we tried, I explained that one before. Definitely go and see Loch Ness, but there are a lot nicer lochs to go and see. And things like that. Yeah, try visiting some of the smaller islands, definitely. So Skye, Mull and Isla, they kind of tend to be the most popular ones. Definitely try Rum, Egg, Muck or Canna is what this article recommends. But yeah, places like Arran as well, beautiful places. So many great little islands to go and visit. There are over 900 of them. So plenty of choice for the small islands. Definitely, if you can, go across there. So the next one is, there is no such thing as trespassing in Scotland. Now, technically there is, but technically the article is correct too. Basically what it means is we do have this act called the Freedom to Roam Act. And what that means is, if you want to go and see a standing stone in the middle of a field, as long as you're looking after that field, make sure that you close a gate or you don't do any damage, then it's totally and utterly fine. You might have somebody come up to you and ask what it is that you're doing. You just explain very politely what it is that you're doing, that you're not like moving into the land or anything like that, then that'll be fine. So technically there's no such thing as trespassing in Scotland. You won't find many people running out their houses with guns, specifically. So, the worst that you're going to get is a chase, probably. And if you get caught, which I would hope that no one would ever do this to you. But, you know, if you do get caught, maybe just a swift punch. But yeah, moving on. Watch out for the midges. Yeah, this is one of the things that pops up round about the summertime. Mentioned especially on these Facebook groups and things like that. Watch out for the midges. You get loads of people saying, I want to come to Scotland, but I don't want the midges and things. It's like, they're just part of it. Basically, midges are like kind of small flies, and basically what happens is when it's very sort of humid and when the air is a little bit wet, these things kind of come out, and it's the female midgie. The male midges are totally and utterly fine. It's the female midges you got to worry about in this case, and what they do is they give you a nasty wee bite, kind of like a mosquito, but they're tiny, you can barely see them. So they give you a nasty wee bite, and then for a wee bit of extra biology and maybe a wee bit of extra knowledge for you, they pee on you then as well. You don't obviously smell that. But yeah, there's ways to kind of get around the midges. You see some people, mainly tourists. I've never seen a Scots person wear one, but you get these kind of like nets for your face and things like that. Genuinely, they're not going to bother you unless you're walking really through like it tends to be near water and grass. So if you walk across like grass, wet grass and things like that during the course of the very kind of humid time, then midges will appear. But really, aside from that, the best things that you can buy is it's called Smidge. Is a brand name, I think, but it's just a kind of thing that you spray on yourself and it tends to repel them. Avon Skin So Soft used to be good, but they changed the recipe, so it's not as good anymore. But yeah, I mean, I used to work outside. I was outside all the time, and I can't remember the last time that I had a sort of severe case of the midges. So yeah, they're not as prominent as you think they are, but they are annoying. But yeah. So next up, stand your ground at the pub. Bars and pubs do not do table service unless it's 2020, 2021, and also now technically 2022. Yeah, so basically, if you're in a pub, so there's a difference between a pub and a restaurant. In the pub, where it's basically just a bar, and that bar may sell food, then you order at the bar. You won't have a waiter or a waitress come up to you and ask for your order. You will have to go up to the bar. So when you get up to the bar, you basically slowly kind of not push, but you basically slowly push your way to the front. And then the best thing to do is to either have your card or some paper money in your hand and to grab the attention. But the best thing to do is don't whistle, don't tap, don't shout at the bar staff. You just wait patiently. And this article also recommends buying in rounds, which is fine. So if you're with a bunch of people, then you buy everyone at your table a drink, and that's called a round. But yeah, I tend to go to quieter bars, so I don't really have to do that. At this moment in time of the coronavirus thing, we've just had to go back to doing table service, and I think that's for the next 3 weeks. So yeah, but unless you're at a restaurant will do table service. But if you're at a bar, just at a pub, you order at the bar. No one will come around and ask you. Even the person who comes around and takes your empty glasses from your table, they're not a waitress or a waiter. They're there to collect the glasses. They're usually from, if I remember rightly, I think you can start working in a pub when you're 16, but you can't sell alcohol until you're 18. So they usually tend to be kitchen staff who are there just to pick up your glasses. They are not there to serve you, kind of thing. The next one is respect the queue. Definitely, if you're in Britain, this is a kind of stereotype of British people that we love to queue. Now, we don't love queuing, don't get me wrong, but we can do it without the need for the poles and the ropes, mostly. So if you go to Florida and places like that, to a theme park, they will have a queue or a line, I think most people would call it. But yeah, so you kind of have, but in order to keep you in the line, they have to enclose you in a sort of barrier type of thing. Whereas in the UK, we don't. We have a system, and that basically means if there's someone in front of you, you get behind them, and then the next person will stand behind you, and then so on and so forth. Please don't try skipping the queue just because you're only buying a box of chewing gum. It will be very annoying. But nowadays, in a lot of shops, especially supermarkets and things, have the wee self-checkout things. So you go over and you can pretend to be a checkout person. Scan your thing, pay the money, walk out, boom, there you go, done. The next one is drink your whiskey right. Now, I think, again, as I've explained, there's no right way and there's no wrong way to drink whiskey as such. If you've bought it, it's yours. You can do with it what you like. But yes, it is true that we do not tend to mix our single malt specifically with soft drinks such as Coke. But you can have ice, you can have water, you can have whatever it is that you want with it, you can have it. So there is no right way or wrong way to drink whiskey, but there's definitely the way in which we prefer it, and we tend to prefer it without ice, without water, sometimes with a little dash of water, but everyone's taste is different, as I've explained before. So treat your whiskey the way that you wish to treat your whiskey, but you will not be looked at very kindly in a pub if you ask for a single malt whiskey, especially like an 18 or a 20-year-old whiskey with Coke or anything else. Haggis is great, but there is more to eat. Yeah, of course there is. There's tons that you can eat in Scotland. We're not just all about haggis. You can literally get anything that you want. We have so many different cultures and things like that in Scotland in general. We have Chinese food, we have Indian food, we have American food. If you want a McDonald's, if you want a Burger King, a pizza, a Domino's, whatever, you can go and find it. You can have Nando's. There's Spanish restaurants, Japanese restaurants, literally anything that you want. You can go and have. But while you're here, have haggis, have it in a traditional place, or go to a chip shop and have fish and chips, proper fish and chips, not from a restaurant, from a chip shop, eaten out of a bag or a paper bag, usually on a cardboard plate with lots of salt and sauce. So there are plenty of things to eat in Scotland. Don't just think that we're all about haggis. Carrying on from that, the next one says try some different local delicacies. Tons of it. So then this recommends Iron Brew. Definitely have Iron Brew. It doesn't taste like bubblegum. Please stop saying it tastes like bubblegum. It tastes nothing like bubblegum. If you want a bubblegum flavoured drink, then Bars, the company that makes Iron Brew, makes a bubblegum flavoured drink. So it doesn't taste anything like bubblegum, because Iron Brew tastes like Iron Brew. Shortbread, try shortbread. Of course, if you've never had shortbread, where have you been? It's like crack. It's amazing. You'll just want to eat it all the time and your teeth will fall out. Oat cakes, put stuff on oat cakes, don't just eat them. Deer seem to like oat cakes, probably bad for them. But I used to feed them oat cakes. And now I'm going to get a letter from Peter. Cullen skink, definitely. Cullen skink is amazing. Smoked fish soup. Num num num. Tasty, tasty, tasty. Stovies are delicious. Stovies are kind of traditionally made with the leftovers from a roast, like a kind of Sunday dinner. So it would usually be beef, potatoes, carrots and onions and that sort of thing. And then kind of mashed up together and served with oatcakes or with crusty bread with loads and loads of butter. I like to make kind of them from scratch, and I tend to make them with Lorne sausage. So that's a square sausage. So it's like a steak sausage rather than pork. And it's amazing. You kind of chop it all up together with tatties and stuff. Oh, it's so good. Tunnock's tea cakes, I wouldn't say are a local delicacy, but definitely have a Tunnock's tea cake. But in my opinion, a snowball is better. So a Tunnock's snowball is better than a tea cake. Shoot me. Tablet is another one. Basically it's a sugar cube, but with condensed milk and butter melted into it. It's kind of like fudge, but it has a weirder texture. I prefer fudge over tablet because fudge is softer and chewier, whereas tablet's kind of quite gritty and grainy. The next one says, don't bother trying to drive in the cities. I kind of said that earlier. It is much, much easier to get around via public transport in the cities, but yeah, depends on where it is that you're going. You know, Inverness, quite easy to drive around, but it is also easy to walk around. So yeah, it depends on where you are and where it is that you're going to be going to. I would say maybe not drive, but yeah, again, whatever makes it easier for you. And kind of lastly, I suppose, don't be offended if people aren't excited about your ancestry. I think we kind of covered that in the last episode of the podcast as well, so I think we'll just leave it kind of where I left it before. And Kat has also given us some fast facts about Scotland. So we'll run through these as well, just to kind of make these up too. So fast facts about Scotland. Scotland uses the British pound, GBP I suppose, yeah, sterling, and it's sterling. So sterling for the money is spelt with an E rather than an I, and sterling, so you got sterling and sterling. Sterling is the city, sterling is the currency. The national animal is a unicorn. If you didn't know that, again, where have you been? Glasgow is the largest city. Yep. Perth is the newest city. Scotland has over 2,000 castles. I believe it's actually over 3,000. The most popular being Edinburgh Castle, Stirling Castle, Urquhart Castle, St Andrews Castle and Doon Castle. Yeah, I've not been to St Andrews Castle in a long time. There we go. There's something else that I need to do next year. Most museums and art galleries are free to enter. Yes, this is one of my favourite ever things. Imagine my surprise when I went to Amsterdam a couple of years ago. I went to go to the Van Gogh Museum, I think it was, and it was like 25 euros to get in. I was like, what? Museums are free? But apparently only in the UK they're free. Drivers in Scotland drive on the left-hand side of the road. Yes, I mean, why that's not number one, I do not know. But yeah, drivers in Scotland drive on the left-hand side of the road unless you are an Audi, a BMW or a Mercedes driver, in which case you're on the right-hand side of the road overtaking all of the cars on the left-hand side of the road because you've got no patience. Scots is a language but is no longer widely spoken. All native Scots speak English. I would say that Scots is more widely spoken than Gaelic, but there you go. Gaelic is still spoken, but not by many people. Only around 60,000 people speak it now, mostly in the Outer Hebrides. Yeah, we sort of mentioned that earlier. Scotland is full of mountains. Mountains over 3,000 feet tall are called Munros, and there are 282 of them. That is very, very true. We haven't really talked about mountains yet, have we? There are over 120 whisky distilleries in the country, and you can tour many of them and have samples. Yes, that's the best part about visiting a whisky distillery, is getting to sample what it is that they're trying to peddle to you. There are 900 Scottish islands. Most of them are uninhabited. The main island groups are the Orkney Islands, the Shetland Islands, the Inner Hebrides and the Outer Hebrides. Yep, can't disagree with that. Scotland hosts many world-famous festivals, such as Edinburgh's Hogmanay. Not this year, it's been cancelled again. The Edinburgh Fringe, the Stonehaven Fireball Festival, not this year because it's been cancelled again. Celtic Connections and the Isla Festival of Music and Malt. I've always wanted to go to Isla during the festival. It'd be amazing to go there. But yeah, and lastly, Scotland has very long summer days and very long winter nights due to how far north it is. In the summer, you can expect daylight until 11 p.m. during late June. However, in the winter, you're looking at darkness by 5 p.m. in the north. I would say you're looking at sort of darkness around about 4:45, 4 o'clock nowadays. But yeah, so yeah, very, very sort of interesting article there. Once again, it was found on catsgoneglobal.com, so that's spelled with a K, so KATS goneglobal.com. I'll link it down below, and have a wee look through some of the additional things that the author has written about this. So once again, folks, I'll leave it there. It's been, again, quite a long one. So thank you very much for listening, and I will speak to you again soon, hopefully not too far in the future, but again, just things are going to be very, very hectic over the course of the Christmas period for myself, and of course I understand for yourselves as well. So if I don't speak to you beforehand, please have a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I will hopefully try and set something up for maybe kind of New Year's Eve or something like that, just a quick live thing on Facebook or something, if that's something that you would be interested in. So if you want to keep in touch with me, do so via the Facebook page, so facebook.com/ScottHistoryPod, at ScottHistoryPod on Twitter and on Instagram. Send me an email at scotthistorypod@gmail.com. And if you want to support the podcast in any way, you can do so via Patreon. That's patreon.com/ScottHistoryPod. So once again, folks, thank you very much for listening. I will see you again next time.